In 1882, the German philosopher Nietzsche pronounced that God was dead. The prognosis has since been confirmed by science. Because Christianity is wrong, it kept us in the Dark Ages for many centuries. It is only as science has come to replace blind faith that Western civilization has made progress. As the church waned, our society moved towards harmony and prosperity. This is a story I swallowed for the first 30 years of my life. I looked elsewhere for the answers to life's big questions. In my teens I was a socialist, but that phase didn't last long. I quickly learned that giving too much power to the government always ends in disaster. I tried atheism, but I just could not believe that everything is explained by physics. Something inside me knew that life had another layer of meaning. So I tried psychotherapy, yoga, Buddhism, Taoism and all the rest. I travelled all over Asia, staying in monasteries in India, Nepal and Japan. I studied acupuncture and herbal medicine in China. But something was missing. I began to do some digging into my own culture. I did a lot of reading and talked to many people over several years. And slowly a very different picture began to emerge. I found that Western civilization had developed, not in spite of the church, but because of it. That's right, we would not be living in our comfortable, tolerant world, if not for the efforts of the church. Ha! That's a pretty outrageous claim, isn't it? I hear you laugh. Indeed it is. So this series of videos will take a good look at the evidence, and you can make your own mind up. We will look at politics and ask why democracy arose only in Christian lands, and why, in the main, it has only thrived here. We will show how the notion of human rights stems directly from the teaching of Christ and has been consistently proclaimed by the Church, in the teeth of opposition from the secular world. We will show how Christian principles were embedded in our legal system, which gave protection to the poor. The absolute rule of kings gave way to power sharing and parliaments. We will look at the birth of science. Like democracy, it arose in Christian countries. This was no coincidence. Science only got off the ground due to Christian theology. Christians denied the pagan teaching that nature is governed by planets and tree spirits, and insisted that God ran the universe according to fixed laws. This insight led to the quest for scientific principles. The Christian monks who first developed science believed that God made us in His image, and so humans are capable of understanding reality. In contrast, Buddhism teaches the doctrine of Maya. Reality is an illusion. Why would you bother exploring it then? We will look at how Christianity shaped the development of art. Before you can have literature, you need a written language. After the Roman Empire collapsed in the 5th century, who were the only people who could read for hundreds of years? The monks. They were the only ones to think it worthwhile to guard and study the ancient texts of Greece and Rome. When all around was darkness and destruction, they kindled the flame of learning. And, when the rulers adopted Christianity, the monks persuaded them to rebuild the libraries which had been torched by the pagans. Armies of monk scribes were employed to make copies of the ancient texts. If it were not for their efforts, most of the Greek and Roman classics would have been lost forever. From the 9th century, the monks started schools across Europe. From the 11th century, these cathedral schools started to become universities, where people could come to study all subjects: mathematics, philosophy, logic, science. So much for a culture of blind faith. Christ said, God is love, and Christians try to put love at the centre of all we do. Granted, we often fail. Love inspired the early Christians to do something quite radical: care for the homeless, the weak and the sick. The world's first civilian hospital was founded by St. Basil the Great in the 4th century in the Roman province of Caesarea, modern-day Turkey, after the Roman Empire became Christian. The hospital movement spread quickly throughout Europe, staffed chiefly by unpaid monks. Imagine that, a health service without a wages bill. The Christian teaching to care for the sick has become so embedded in our culture that we forget what a radical thing it was back then. People were shocked to see Christians taking in the sick and the destitute who had nobody to care for them. Indeed, that is what inspired many to embrace the faith. And what has modern man made of love? A trick by our genes to make us reproduce? A recreational activity? Truly, in neglecting God, we have lost our vision of love as the most important thing in the universe. We will also delve into psychology and philosophy. As well as shaping our society, Christianity has shaped our mindset. We would not be the people we are today without that influence. So, are you willing to look at the evidence with an open mind? Come and see and decide if you agree. Our civilization has come about not despite Christ's teachings, but because of them. Reject Christ, and you reject the rock on which our world is built. And if you accept that our world is built on Christ's teachings, maybe those teachings are not so crazy after all. Can you build a magnificent palace with a flawed design, inaccurate measurements, and a sloppy workforce? No, you can only build it on the truth.